Coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast, Forbidden has a brand new single. Machine Head flips out over a bad review of their new album called Unatoned. I talk about the content in the new Metallica Load Boxset, and the band Alcatrazz has a brand new single. All of that coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command podcast.
Greetings and welcome back to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. Always excited to see everybody today. And of course, if you do want to support the program, by all means, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. And if you follow this show on any other form of social media, by all means, give the show a like, a follow, or a subscribe there. Also, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Today's show, I have, of course, a lot to get to. Metallica released their new Super Deluxe box set of the album Load, and I'm going to talk about the contents inside of it and why I love a lot of the content that's in that box set, even if I think the Load album isn't their best. We have a new single by Alcatrazz. For those of you that may or may not know, they are signed to Brave Words Records, and Giles Lavery is their new singer. And they re-recorded a song from their back catalog. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that. Machine Head posted on their Facebook page, which they later deleted to their credit, a retort to a very bad review of their new album Unatoned by a outlet called the Metal Forces magazine. I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I have a lot of thoughts on how bands should really respond to criticism and bad reviews. But with that said, the most important topic for me of the day, and the one I'm going to start out with today, I'm going to start off with the new single by Forbidden called Divided by Zero. The single dropped not long ago, and if you saw my posting on Facebook, I absolutely love this song, and I would say about 99% of the comments that I see are in agreement with me that the song is absolutely phenomenal. Folks, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. When they announced Norm Skinner as their new singer, I knew right away that would be a phenomenal fit for Forbidden. I knew right away that this single was going to be good, and I'm pretty sure, I'm about 99% sure the album is going to be incredible. I'm going to give you two reasons for that. The first reason is that the guys that are in Forbidden, they're incredible songwriters, and they are incredible players. And the last album they put out, the Omega Wave, I thought was probably one of the most incredible albums I've ever heard a thrash metal band put out. They have, the Forbidden Evil, you have Twisted into Form. Those are great records. I actually did like Distortion a bit. And I actually liked Green. I know a lot of people don't like that one for whatever reason, but I actually do dig that record. But I knew, because I've been doing this for almost 30 years, I have a very good instinct about who is going to be a great fit for a band or not. And as soon as they announced Norm Skinner as their new singer, I knew right away that was going to be a great fit. If you go back into the show archives, and I will put a link to that podcast, I think it was a couple years ago, I said this guy was the perfect fit for the band. And I wasn't wrong. Now, when I say things like this, of course, my own expectations go up. Like I go and I listen to this song's, it's got to be good. My expectations get sky high when I see a guy like Norm, who has a great attitude and great approach to music in general. And these guys in Forbidden that are incredible players, my expectations get pretty high. And not only did the band meet my expectations as far as how good the song would be, they exceeded it. You know, we see a lot of bands, thrash bands, not just heavy metal bands, not even thrash, but heavy metal bands in general. You get these bands that haven't put out albums in years. They come back, people hype them up, and they put out a very mediocre song or mediocre record or a flat out bad album or bad song, because I've talked about a few of those recently. Forbidden is not that band. In fact, this new single, first of all, this new single blew me away. It's very rare, too, that a band releases for an upcoming album really has this much of a positive impact on me. But this song did. And these guys, they are not some band that's like coming back after, a decade and a half to put out, a mediocre record, maybe play some shows. These guys, they're showing everybody how it should be done. The new song, incredible songwriting. The production is on point, and Norm is a perfect fit. And it's interesting when you think about that, because when Norm first joined the band, you didn't have a lot of people saying very much about him. I think part of it was that Russ had basically said he retired from music, if I recall. Nobody really started saying, oh my God, Norm, he can't replace Russ or it's going to be bad. Nobody started criticizing Norm until they announced new music coming up. Then suddenly, all of a sudden, it's no Russ, no Forbidden, folks. All of that nonsense started happening. And then the song came out, and all of those people were oddly quiet because everybody had to eat crow with not only how great the song is, but with how well Norman Skinner fits on their music. And it's not actually, folks, it's really hard for a replacement singer to, have to deal with the stigma of replacing someone like Russ Anderson. Or, even when I talked about in, Crimson Glory, when I talked about Travis Wills having to, fill Midnight shoes in that band. And we saw how a lot of Travis's critics have shut up now that they've been playing shows, and he's proven all of them wrong. Well, Norm has done the same thing as a vocalist, and Forbidden has obviously shown that they can do this with the right guy. And that's the thing. It's about the fit. Lots of talented singers out there, but who fits the best? And Norm, you couldn't find a guy that would fit in with their music any better than Norman Skinner. Not only vocally, but with the way that he approaches things. Because Norm is not a guy that has a crazy, ridiculously huge ego that's going to come in there and say, we need to do it like this, that, or other thing, or do it my way. He's not going to do anything like that. In fact, let's go back to the most recent interview I did with Norm when we talk about his vocal approach to this album. Check out this clip. This clip is from the most recent interview. I think we did this about a month and a half ago. Check it out. Does it bring something different out in your vocal approach or in your voice, working with guys like this that have been around a long time in a little bit of a different style of music that you've been, different from what you've been doing? And, you've done some thrash metal in the past, but it's different with guys like that because these dudes have been around a long time. They're in a very, well-known thrash metal band from the Bay Area. That's, to be honest, it has always been an incredible band. Did it bring something different out of you that you probably didn't think you had, when recording, music like that?
Not really in that sense. I mean, I'm not doing anything that I've not done before, in a sense. And you're right. Back when I did Imagica, that was basically a sort of a power thrash band. I thrashed up on some songs, clean singing, but I wasn't a seasoned vocalist as I am now. I didn't know everything I know now. I mean, if you listen to like the first two, I think, Magic albums I did, you might find one harmony on there. Like, I didn't even know how to really do harmonies. It was like, if I wanted a harmony, I just doubled the line of the same damn note.
Yeah.
So we learn and we grow. And now I think it's to the point where I go in the studio, I'm not doing anything that I've never done, but at the same time, working with these guys, I am doing things a bit different. They are coming up with ideas and making me think completely different sections of songs where I would think this way, and they're like, well, what if we do this? What if you try that? I'm like, I would have never thought of it that way. It's
Yeah.
just a different style. And you know, that part is very fun. For anybody that has an open mind, and I can take criticisms and ideas because I'm very open minded. I don't go in a situation thinking, this is the way I wrote it, this is my melody, and that is it.
Yeah.
I go in there thinking, this is what I want it to sound like, but let's see what everyone's ideas, you know, what they make it sound like in the end. So.
And that's Norman Skinner talking about his whole vocal approach to the album. Now, here's how you know somebody is going to be a great fit from an attitude perspective. If you notice in that clip, he talked about how those guys had him thinking differently as far as his approach goes. You know what that tells me? It tells me that he walked into the room, he listened to their advice, and was very open-minded, probably of any kind of criticism, and open-minded to how he should approach their music. These guys wrote it, obviously, but very open-minded of how to approach this vocally. He didn't walk in with an ego. You know, some of these singers, they walk in with egos and they think, I know what I'm doing. You guys don't know shit. I mean, we've seen that happen in bands. I'm sure a lot of you have been in bands where that's happened, or we've witnessed that. He didn't do that. He walked in with an open mind and was willing to learn from a group of guys who have written some incredible music. That tells me he doesn't have a ridiculous ego. And that tells me why he is such a great fit. Because you have to remember, and we talked about this in that interview. I'll link that interview in the show notes. Norm's a fan of that band's music. You know, his whole thing was to not only do the old songs justice from a live standpoint, but do the music justice by singing it the way it needs to be sung. And if that means you have to listen to people and approach things differently in order for that to happen, he was willing to do that. Now, I don't know the guys in Forbidden at all. I think I'd like to say when Omega Wave came out about 15 years ago, I might have had Craig on my show. I don't remember now. But they seem like incredibly nice guys. They are, you know, one of those bands that has always been overlooked in the context of the Bay Area thrash scene, because, you know, most people are going to think of Testament. Most people are going to think of, you know, Metallica coming out of that thrash scene in the 80s, and Megadeth and Slayer and, you know, a lot of those bands. But they were part of that crop of bands in the 80s that emerged. And, you know, they've always been sort of overlooked. You know, a lot of people for a long time would say, oh, that was Paul Bostaff's old band, the drummer for Slayer, but pretty much Kerry King's solo band now. But I've always loved Forbidden. I actually discovered Forbidden in the early 90s. I found a used copy of Twisted into Form. And I think when I was in high school, I believe Distortion came out, and then Green came out a couple years after I graduated. I followed the band ever since then. And since the Omega Wave came out, I've been waiting for a follow-up, hoping there would be a follow-up. So I am excited. Folks, I am excited for this new Forbidden album. This single is absolutely incredible. And again, as I pointed out earlier, the production is on point. The songwriting is phenomenal. And Norm is a perfect fit. And I am willing to bet this is definitely going to be an Album of the Year candidate. Now, I cannot wait to hear the whole album whenever that happens, and hopefully get the band on the show, because I absolutely love this single, and I am super excited that these guys are back. So props to Forbidden. You deserve all the praise in the world. You deserve more than that. I normally don't rate songs higher than a 10 out of 10, but it's definitely a 10 out of 10. And if I were to break my own rules, I would probably give it like a 12 out of 10. And that's where I stand with it. Now let's move on to another topic that is a topic that actually I've wanted to talk about for quite some time. Machine Head received a very bad review from a publication or an outlet, whatever you want to call it, called Metal Forces Magazine, which I believe is an outlet that's been around since the early 80s. And they received an absolutely terrible review. It was actually a pretty brutal review, to be honest with you. And the band responded accordingly, as you see on the screen, telling them to go F themselves. But before I read into that, I just want to let you guys know this is an episode I've wanted to do. I wanted to talk about how bands deal with criticism. So this is a perfect way for me to be able to do that. Now, I do want to tell you a few things before I, preface this by telling you a few things. Number one, I am not a hater of Machine Head, nor do I really like them. I typically would not talk about them or really review any of their albums because they play a brand of heavy metal I'm just not into. It's not that I think they are bad, but the type of heavy metal they play is not a style of metal I typically like. Therefore, I have my own rule that if I'm not into that kind of heavy metal, or if it's a band that I know is big and has a big following, but they aren't a band I'm really into, I tend to not review their music because I don't think it's fair to the artist to review bands that play music I generally, like a subgenre of heavy metal that I generally do not like. Now, I have all the respect in the world for their success. They have a huge following. I have a lot of respect for Rob Flynn and where he's taken that band. So just want to let you guys know that I'm neither a huge supporter or a hater. So I really don't, I'm really pretty much unbiased when it comes to this take. I also want to let you all know that I, as a musician, have been praised in reviews. I've also been ripped apart in reviews. I've also been a music critic for close to 30 years, and I've been a publicist. So I would say that qualifies me to talk about this subject and talk about why their response was bad. So let's get into this really quick. So let me read the review for you first. Metal Forces put up on a post, "Never has a band sounded so sanitized and soulless, which is saying something when you consider how bad some of Machine Head's discography is." 3 out of 10. And Machine Head shared the post and told them to go F themselves. Now, to their credit, they did take it down, I believe, but that was their initial response. Folks, that response from them is a terrible way to handle a bad review and to respond to it. And somebody probably told them that because they ended up deleting their post. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why this is bad. And folks, I got to be honest with you. I'm actually quite surprised a band this established would flip out like that publicly about a bad review. Because you know what they should have done as far as how to react to it? They should have ignored it. They should have ignored it and went about their day. Now, I understand as a musician, you spend months, sometimes years, recording and writing an album, only to have someone take a dump on it after listening to it for 10, 15 minutes. I get the frustration. I understand why they would be pissed. But here's the thing that any artist, anyone that's in any kind of art, as a photographer, because I'm a photographer as well, as a musician, artist, whatever, you have to surrender to the fact that art is subjective. And you are always going to have people that are going to praise you to high heaven, and you are always going to have people that are going to tear you apart and take a shit on your album. That's just how it is. And once you accept that, reviews like this typically won't bother you. I'll give you an example. The last Empires of Eden album, the newest album, Guardians of Time. I recorded a song on that. I actually helped to write and record a song in that album. There were outlets like KNAC, which and others that really praised and loved the record, praised my vocal approach on the song that I recorded. And then there are outlets that completely tore the album apart and actually tore every vocalist a new one in the review, including myself. Can't please everybody. That is how I look at it. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why a response like Machine Head's response to this review is a very poor way to handle it. And I'm going to give you one way to actually respond to it, but you're responding indirectly. You're not responding to the review itself. So let me talk about the 4 things that are bad. First of all, when you share something like this and flip out about it, as soon as you do that publicly, and if you have a huge following like Machine Head does, every single troll, every single person that doesn't like you, anyone that's jealous of you, anybody out there looking to kick someone when they are down is going to be attracted to that post. They are going to comment on that post, and it's going to drive that crappy review up in the algorithms. Let me repeat that. When you respond like this, you are going to get a ton of people who dislike you that are going to go into the comments, troll you, looking to kick you when you're down, jealous of your success. Anybody you could think of that doesn't like you or just hates themselves and hates life is going to go into that thread and start bashing you even more. And then that bad review will get magnified because the more responses it gets from you, especially someone with some of the someone who has the following that Machine Head does, it's going to drive that review up in the algorithms. Number 2, if these people, if you look at the review, they don't really generally seem like a publication that likes most of Machine Head's material. So the thing is, when you're a band that I believe has a bigger following than somebody that's a publication, why would you want to give them any publicity by flipping out about it? Because Machine Head has basically given Metal Forces some free publicity for bashing their record, which also drives the responses and the views on Metal Force's site way up. So Machine Head is actually helping somebody who completely took a dump on their record by by sharing that post. Why would you want to do that? If they don't like you in general and they don't like your album, why would you want to? You shouldn't put them out there and give them more publicity. The third consequence of it, let's say this is a publication that seems to have supported you in the past. When you put that up there, and let's say this publication's pretty well known, let's say, they reviewed your albums in the past and they gave you all good ratings, and this is like the first one they didn't like. You're really kind of burning that bridge a little bit with them. Again, you should ignore the review, move on with it. And lastly, reason number 4 is that people are going to see that response, and it is just a bad look from a professionalism standpoint. Now, Machine Head has a pretty big following. Obviously, you are going to have no shortage of promoters looking to book them for shows because obviously they can make money off of a band with their following. But it still looks bad. And you never know what bridges you may burn, possibly, by putting something out there like that in public. Even if your band's well known, there might be somebody that could have helped you or helped your band a lot that might see that and say, you know what, if those guys can't handle some minor criticism, why would I want to work with somebody like that? There are people out there that will think that way. So I understand why they would be pissed. You work hard on a record. You work months, sometimes years, spend a lot of money to record it, only to have some publication shit on it. I get the anger. But this response by them is absolutely stupid. Now, how do you combat this? You don't combat it by sharing a post and flipping out about it on social media. The way you combat it is something I have mentioned in other episodes. Because obviously, I went and Googled reviews for the Unatoned album by Machine Head. And there were a lot of great reviews. What they should be doing is sharing all those reviews and highlighting them. Regardless of if that publication has 1 follower or 1 million, you just saturate social media with every positive review that you receive. It'll pretty much drown out a 3 out of 10 review from a publication that doesn't seem like they like your stuff anyway. That's how you combat that. That is the professional way and the logical way to deal with that situation. A couple things. First, I went and decided to check the album out because if it got such a bad review by these guys, I wanted to hear, is the album that bad? So I went and checked on Atoned Out. And to be honest with you, I don't even listen to the kind of metal that Machine Head typically writes, and I would never have given it that bad of a review. It definitely is no 3 out of 10. But within that kind of subgenre of heavy metal that they play, I'd probably say it's at least a 6 or a 7. Again, not my thing, but there are some pretty decent songs on that album, especially for someone like me that doesn't listen to the kind of music that they make. Again, I neither like or dislike the band, but their response was absolutely ridiculous. Now, lastly, I'm going to end this segment off with this. I am going to talk about music critics. And if you are a band or if you're someone in Machine Head, you probably know this. Maybe you don't. But I've been around 27 years. And critics will say and do things for different reasons other than music. So let me explain this. Some critics will give an album a great rating even if they don't like it to curry favor with a record label or a band, or they want to make friends with bands. Some people may, for whatever reason, may not like the record label you're on or are pissed off and will leave a bad review. There are a lot of people that are really not honest with their opinions. Maybe Rob Flynn has a hater that's there. Maybe someone he met 20 years ago. Who knows? But I can tell you a lot of reviewers and what they write are not necessarily very honest in their opinions. They just aren't. And I tell anybody that if you want to be someone that reviews heavy metal, talks about heavy metal and talks about music, you can't be in this to make friends. Now, granted, I've made friends over the years. A lot of you know who those friends are. But you don't do this if you're not here to make friends. You're here to give an honest opinion and an honest take on things. And not every critic is going to give you their honest opinion. Some of them will. I know quite a few that do, but there are also quite a few that do not. I want to throw that out there, folks, because you have to take these bad reviews with a grain of salt, ignore them, and anybody who praises your band, highlight their positive review. Again, it doesn't matter if that publication has 1 follower or 1 million. You want to highlight anybody praising your work. So, again, I give all the credit to the world to Machine Head for taking that screenshot or taking that post down. I believe they have. But folks, if you are in a band, this is not the way to respond to a critic or a review that you do not like. Ignore it. Post the positive reviews and pretend that bad review does not exist. At least that's how I handle criticism. All right, coming up next here on the show, I'm going to go through the content on the Metallica Load Boxset. I'm also going to talk about the new Alcatrazz song, which is a re-recorded song from their first album with Giles Lavery singing. So I'll talk about all of that after the break show, please by all means hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. Follow me on any other social media outlet that you see this program, and again, I appreciate all of your support. Welcome back to the Metal Command podcast here on the second half of the Metal Command show, and of course here right after the break. Let's start off the second half of the show talking about Alcatrazz. Alcatrazz inked a new deal with Brave Words Records, which I think was a very good thing for them, and it goes without saying how high of an opinion I have on the group of people running Brave Words Records and having a record label being a part of Brave Words. And, of course, their new singer, Giles Lavery, works for the label, and they also have a great PR guy in Michael Brandvold as well. But nothing but great things to say about Brave Words Records. They just won their trademark dispute, I believe. I saw that in the news. I'm not really here to talk about that. At some point, maybe I'll have somebody on the band on the show to talk a bit more about that because I don't know the ins and outs of it. But I want to talk about the new single, Island in the Sun, which is a re-recorded version of that song, which originally appeared on the debut album. And the thing is, what's crazy is that you hear people, when I hear this track, you have a lot of these people that are saying, no Graham Bonnet, no Alcatrazz. And, stuff like that can kind of get a little irritating because, number one, Jimmy Waldo, who, by the way, had a great performance on the new A through Z album, he has carried this band on throughout the years. Graham has not been a part of this band, throughout quite a bit of his existence. But him and then even Gary Shea, these guys have carried this band on, and they're both founding members. They're still in the band. And when people say stuff like that without hearing any new music, it's just a very ignorant thing. People were saying that, for example, I talked about in the earlier part of this whole episode, how people were saying Norm Skinner could not replace Russ Anderson in Forbidden, or people saying that Travis Wills could not, fill Midnight's shoes in Crimson Glory. And people were saying this stuff before these guys have even performed, or a record has even come out, because the new Crimson Glory hasn't come out yet. I mean, there's one song out there, but the record hasn't come out. And both of those guys changed the opinions of a lot of the critics. Now, you have a lot of people that are going to be critical of Giles. They were critical of Doogie White. But personally, I had to go back and listen to the No Parole from Rock and Roll album, because at the time when I first listened to it, it was many, many years ago. But as a refresher, I went and checked the album out again. And I'm going to be honest. I know, music is subjective. We have our opinions. I've really never been a big fan of Graham Bonnet's vocals. Again, I have all the respect in the world for how successful the guy has been and any success he has had in the music business. I thought he actually did a pretty good job on the Down to Earth album by Rainbow. But I've never really been a big fan of his vocals in general. And when I say this, I want you all to take that into account when I say this. Because obviously, the guy has a pretty big following, has a pretty solid following of people that love his vocals. I get it. This is a preference. But I'm going to be honest with you. I like the version Giles did on this song better than the original one. And I like a lot of, you see like videos of Doogie White singing some of these songs. I personally prefer his vocals over Graham Bonnet's on some of this old material. I just never really been a big fan of his voice. When I listened to the first Alcatrazz album, the music is great. And Graham's vocals aren't like bad to like where I would say, I can't listen to that record. But I just don't care for how he sounds on it. That's it. I like how he sounded on Down to Earth by Rainbow. But the Alcatrazz stuff, I never really thought he fit that great on. And that's just me. That's just my opinion. I mean, it's not terrible, by any means. I just like Giles' voice better on this song. I would like Doogie White's voice better on this song. But I think the re-recorded version of this song is very, very good. It's very well done. Giles, his performance is pretty awesome. And I think he's a great fit for Alcatrazz. I really do. I really think that he is going to fit this band for a new studio album. And even some of the stuff you see of him singing live, like on YouTube or whatnot, anything that's out there, he sounds pretty incredible with them, considering he was kind of rushed in to fill in at the last minute. And I got to be honest, I'm looking forward to new music by these guys. The other thing is, I really like, as a keyboard player, I think Jimmy Waldo's style is also incredible. I mentioned A through Z. I'm going to comment on that really quick. Mark Zonder had talked about, Jimmy Waldo being like an unsung hero of the album, but I really think his playing and his approach on that A through Z album was incredible. And it was one of the major differences as to why I like that album better than the first A through Z album. So I'm really excited for this new Alcatrazz album, because the reason being is that the band seems excited about it. The label is going to put a lot into it. They were going to really bust their ass to promote this. And it's just such a positive situation. The trademark dispute nonsense, I guess, is over now. It's everything positive is heading into this. And I'll be honest, I think Giles, who is a fan of their music, I think he just fits the song better. That's just me. But I am really looking forward to the next Alcatrazz album. And the music, I went back to some of the past records they've done. They're a pretty good band. And, they're one of those bands that when I was younger, I heard them. I kind of wrote them off a little bit. And then, a few months ago, I decided to explore their back catalog again. And like many things out there, including the album I'm going to talk about next on this program, it's just one of those things where you get older and then you listen to something again and you're like, man, I don't know why I didn't like this, but I like it now. So really looking forward to the next Alcatrazz. I think the new version of Island in the Sun, sung by Giles Lavery, I think that's an incredible version of the song. I like it better than the original. And I look forward to their next album, which will come out on Brave Words Records. Now let's get to the last topic of the show. Metallica's new box set. Metallica released a box set for the album Load, the Super Deluxe box set, which has all sorts of cool stuff in it. And they have done that for every album prior to that. Did it for Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, Justice for All, and then the Black Album. And now they have the Load box set. And I debated on getting this because at the time when I heard the album Load, I really wasn't that big of a fan. I wasn't really a hater of it. It just didn't really do anything for me when I heard it. I still have my copy that I bought for $2 used a month after the Load album came out, when a lot of the old school Metallica fans were not very happy and ended up getting rid of the record. But I hadn't listened to Load in almost 30 years. All of these box sets are really cool. The thing about them, and I'll tell you the biggest reason I ended up getting the box set is for a lot of the live shows and the live material that's on it. That's actually what drew me to this specific set. So all of these Metallica box sets, they include a really nicely packaged vinyl copy of the album, the copy of the album on vinyl. You have a CD version of the album, remastered, by the way. They usually have one of the live shows on vinyl. Some of them, like the Master of Puppets box set, has a live show on a cassette that came in the box set. Mostly everything else is going to be on CDs. You might have a 12-inch or a 7-inch picture disc single. And a couple of them, like the Black Album box set, has like a 12-inch single from some live stuff from Wembley Stadium in England. And, they have this show where they played to like 500,000 people in some airfield in Russia. But all of these box sets, they have something for everybody. You got a remastered version of the album. You have a lot of really cool demos and outtakes. You have, in one of them, you have Jason Newsted's audition tapes. You have a lot of live shows, live recorded shows. Now, the further some of these live shows, some of them are professionally recorded. Some of them have kind of a bootleg quality to them. Now, the further you go back to the earlier albums, you have more of that bootleg sound, where it might have been recorded on a 1/2-inch tape or a 1/4-inch tape or, whatever. But as you get to the newer albums, the quality of the live material gets better and better. Personally, of all of the box sets Metallica has put out, the Live in Seattle 1989 is my favorite live album. And the cool thing about it is you have all this music in all these different formats. There is a card in the box set with a code on it where you can download all of the music that's in the box set. So like if you're somebody that, let's say you want to put, you take CDs and rip them into the computer, make MP3s out of them, whatever you want to do. Like if you're someone that likes physical media, but then you dump it in the computer so you can put it on an iPhone so you can listen to it in the car, because most cars don't have CD players at this point. Then you can just download all the content and you have it all there, and you just put it into whatever player that you use, Winamp, or you use iTunes or whatever you use. And they have that option in there, especially since like some of these live concerts, the only physical format you have them in is on vinyl or download. They don't, like, for example, the Live in Seattle 89, there is no CD version of it. It's just the album on vinyl. And then you have the download version that you get from the download card. But I got to be honest with you, Metallica has really set the gold standard when it comes to a box set. The box sets are incredible. This one is no exception to that. I went and checked out the Load album again, just for the hell of it. And I like it better than I did when I first heard it when I was in high school. There are definitely a couple other songs on that album that, kind of resonated more with me now, almost 30 years later. But I still think it's a big step down from the Black Album, Justice, and, anything that came before. However, there is some incredible content in this album. So the live show in vinyl, it's called Loadapalooza. That is from Irving Meadows, California. That recording sounds incredible. And I'm going to show you right here. Stack of CDs. All of the CD content in this box set. And a lot of these box sets too, they got replicas of old flyers and posters and things, from past shows. They got a hardbound book in them with a lot of great commentary from fellow musicians and contemporaries and journalists, a lot of photos. I mean, they do not spare any expense in making these box sets. You have Escape from the Studio 95. This has a show from Donington. They actually begin the show off with Bread Fan. That live recording is also incredible. You have studio stuff. This is kind of like a, this thing here. This is a DVD. These sets have DVDs in them. Polar Beach Party. This is actually one I haven't listened to yet. I haven't gotten to it, but this is a concert. You have the Poor Swedish Me concert here. This is a DVD as well. On-air TV appearances. And again, DVD. Club shows and rehearsals. So they do play a show at Slim's, which was pretty solid. You have B-sides and rarities. This has alternate versions of songs. You have B-sides of songs. You have some Motorhead covers on here. You have some really cool stuff on here. You have the alternate version of Outlaw Torn. Actually, one of the songs I do really like a lot off the album. These are all like the riffs, demos, and outtakes on this. And if you look at, it's interesting because I think it was for the Injustice for All album. I checked out the disc with the demos, and it's quite interesting how these songs came about, like how they kind of started out when they started recording them versus what they sounded like on the album. More riffs, demos, session takes, alternative mixes on this one. You got another disc of that. A show from Norway. Sounds pretty solid, actually. Sounds very good. Soundboard tapes from various places. And last but not least, you have the remastered version of the album itself. The packaging is incredible, folks. If you like Metallica, and you really love any of these albums, from Kill 'Em All through Load, these box sets are absolutely incredibly awesome. So that's some of the content you have in there. Again, the Live at Donington show is absolutely insane. The recording quality of most of these live shows is incredible. It's absolutely phenomenal. The DVDs are really, really cool. It's definitely something that if you are a collector and you like Metallica, you definitely should check out. And as these box sets have come out, they've also upgraded the materials, the packaging. They've become more popular. You know, I remember when Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning came out, they weren't really selling them out that quickly. In the Load one, they had so many orders for it, there was a delay. So all these box sets are great. If you were to ask me what my favorite box set is out of all of them, probably going to say the box set for Injustice for All. Lots of phenomenal content in there. And, you know, a lot of the packaging when it comes to that album, I think that actually has the biggest box out of all of them too. There's just so much cool stuff in there. But that Live in Seattle 89 in the Justice box set is one of the, it's a top 5 live album for me. Anyhow, that's my review for the Load box set. I give the band props. They did a great job packaging it. The remaster sounds very, very good. And I know not everybody likes that album. You know, I definitely don't have it among my favorites, but I still think the content in the box set is awesome. So with that said, that is all for this edition of the Metal Command podcast. Again, if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. Thanks for watching. Stay metal.